Alright, so Capcom just announced yesterday that the game has now sold over 4 million copies worldwide. Now, seeing as their last post here was way back in April, this is pretty exciting. They also make it very clear here that there is still a dedicated Dragon's Dogma 2 team working on the game, which I find very interesting. The wording here is definitely giving me hope that behind the curtains and the silence, there might actually be a DLC in the works. Now, 4 million copies sold is a huge milestone, but it also raises a much bigger question. What does this mean for the future of Dragon's Dogma 2? Are we finally getting a DLC? And most importantly, how does all the data mined content, the multiplayer strings, the boss rush mode, secret dungeons, and the hidden DLC IDs fit into this picture? So today, I'm finally going to break all of this down. Back in May 2024, the game was already at around 3 million, so even a year and a half later, the game is still selling steadily. And the number itself matters, because this isn't a live service game. This is a premium single-player title, and 4 million is enough to justify future investment. But if the game just hit 4 million, why is Capcom so quiet? To answer that, we need to talk about the massive pile of data mined content that the community uncovered. And this is where things get really interesting, and honestly really frustrating, because the amount of content found in the game files is way too big to ignore now. Now, multiple data mining groups have discovered strings in a pre-de novo version of the game referencing an entire multiplayer mode called Multiplayer Tower of the New Moon. Google Translate confirms this, and it wasn't a small reference. There are even strings for multiplayer states, matchmaking, session types, and dungeon parameters. This is interesting because Dragon's Dogma has never had traditional co-op. This suggests one of three things: a co-op dungeon was planned, a separate multiplayer mode existed, or it was major content cut before launch. But it doesn't end there. The same data mine bundle also revealed references to a boss rush mode. GameRanks covered that, and on Reddit they broke down the strings. This would allow players to fight back-to-back boss encounters, almost like a Bloody Palace mode from Devil May Cry, which makes perfect sense for an Itsuno-led project. Also, early research after launch within SteamDB reveals multiple encrypted DLC app IDs attached to Dragon's Dogma 2. These DLC containers appeared shortly after launch, and they're not cosmetics and not microtransactions. So based on size and structure, they could be full DLC slots. But again, Capcom never released any of it. Players have also found sealed-off caves, empty dungeon rooms, unused paths, and geometry for areas you can't access. And this is exactly what DD1 had before Bitter Black Isle launched. Now, there are also more obvious sources that hint upcoming content, like these loading screens of Daemon and the Hydra. And since you also find the Hydra's husk bow within the game, this could be hinting that these monsters does exist within this world. Data miners also found incomplete questlines, NPC dialogues that never trigger, references to a storyline involving the New Moon, which ties directly back to the Tower of the New Moon. This looks like a themed DLC, a dungeon, a story arc, maybe even a region that was either postponed or scrapped. There are several loading screens that mention a northern country. Players can even find coordinates that point to unused map space in that direction. Again, this mirrors Dragon's Dogma 1 before Dark Arisen. And here's the big picture. Dragon's Dogma 2 clearly had major content planned. Multiplayer boss rush, a new moon-themed dungeon or region, hidden DLC IDs, cut questlines, and blocked map areas. Doesn't look like minor cut content. This looks more like an actual DLC development. And seeing as these concepts was once Itsuno's core vision for the game, I think the chances are high for us to see this in an expansion. And now, the game has sold 4 million copies. So the real question is, does this milestone mean Capcom will revive this content? There are two realistic paths. They release a big expansion. Dragon's Dogma 2 now has the sales numbers to justify a full expansion, a Dark Arisen style DLC built around the New Moon Tower, a major dungeon with boss gauntlets, new monsters, and possibly a new region, and maybe even optional multiplayer trials. That would be pretty massive, and honestly, these data mines support it. On the other hand, Itsuno left Capcom in 2024, and multiple teams shifted internally. Sales slowed after launch, and it's possible the DLC was quietly cancelled during the restructuring. And the 4 million post was just a milestone celebration, not a hint. Now here's my take on it. I have always believed the DLC was real. I think it was planned. And I think the 4 million recent post is Capcom testing the waters. And with 500,000 views on one day, well, I think these are some Brian level waters. And the anticipation for a DLC is at an all-time high. But tell me in the comments, let's discuss the possibilities here. Do you think the Tower of the New Moon content will ever release? Or is it cut forever? And if Dragon's Dogma 2 does get a big expansion, what do you want to see? A new region? New bosses, reworked endgame, multiplayer trials, or maybe all of the above. Either way, this is all pretty exciting, and it's also great to finally hear from the Dragon's Dogma 2 team again.